Welcome to the Mom as Well podcast, where we are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps of foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here.
Mama's Well.
Yes, she is. Well, Merry Christmas. It's Christmas week, and we're excited at our home. We actually have a little chill in the air, which is rare in the Houston area, and so that makes it feel just a little bit more like Christmas. And Christmas is super fun at our house. We love Christmas. My family, Christmas is special. But there's a lot of stress around Christmas, and stress is not always my friend. So I just want to take a few minutes out, and if you are going to be anywhere with any people at all this Christmas, I'm just going to offer up to you that you take a few minutes out and let's reflect and think through, prepare for those gatherings. So as foster and adoptive parents, we all know that our kids under stress and in new situations can be challenging. And so I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about how we might prepare ourselves and how we might prepare our children and how we might prepare our loved ones. And to do that, I have asked Anna Valdez to join us. She is an international trauma trainer. She's a TBRI practitioner and I always forget this one, Trauma-Free World affiliate trainer. And she can tell us more about that in a little bit. But I've been to some trainings that you've provided, Anna, and it's been extremely helpful. And so I'm really thankful that you would join us here today to talk about preparing ourselves, preparing our kids, and preparing our loved ones for these big occasions that can elicit a lot of stuff. I guess we'll just call it stuff for now. I'll let you put all the expert to that. But would you talk to us a little bit about that and introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us your background. Tell me where, how did you get started with trauma? I want them to know about this. This is a great story. I've heard it.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to see you. So I've, started this journey into working with vulnerable children really since I graduated college, and I'm not, maybe over 10 years ago. And I was a teacher. I was a high school teacher. And that's really where I started seeing, I remember I had students that were in foster care. I started seeing a little bit, but as a teacher at that point, it's like you have kids for a little while, then they leave and, they kind of go out of your mind. But after I finished graduate school, I decided to volunteer with a ministry, and I was a caregiver in an orphanage, and it was an orphanage, a children's home in Mexico, and I was there for over 5 years, and I cared for 17 teen girls during that time, and really that is where all my questioning started as far as what is going on with these behaviors, what is going on. Wow. I thought I know what to do. I'm a teacher. I'm trained. I can live there. I can raise these girls. That didn't happen. That didn't go very well. So I started educating myself on, what is up with kids that have, been abandoned, that have been hurt? Why am I seeing these behaviors, and what can I do to help them? Yeah. And that was such a long time ago. That's where I started. I had the opportunity to train really in different countries on trauma after that, after I got some education about it. And I have seen just marvelous, marvelous things happen with caregivers. And I think if someone were to ask me, why do you believe in this so much? It's because I have seen my girls that I cared for, some of them even become mothers now. Wow. And do things, nurture their children in a way that they're not supposed to be able to do.
Wow.
And that just shows me that caring for a child in a trauma-informed way, being that consistent, warm caregiver, is very healing in their life. And it can stop patterns. It can stop this pathway where they're supposed to be going according to statistics.
Yeah. So you not only have the knowledge from reading and studying and going to training, but you experienced.
Definitely.
What
I've been a caregiver.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like to try to implement some of these things to care for a child deeply, and even for them to have, maybe still their bio family. And I know what all that feels as a caregiver as well.
That's good. That's good. So so today, because it's Christmas week, and some of us have already been moving into these occasions where we have a lot of people. I just think it would be really powerful if you could give us some pointers, like boots on the ground. What do we do in these situations? How do we move into these chaotic, exciting, fun to us, right?
Yeah.
Moments, and I don't want to just survive them. How do we thrive? What do we do? Start with that. Like, tell us how, I guess first, like, how can we, I always want to start, Mom as Well is about understanding that when we're well, we actually give that to others. So how do we start with ourselves? How do we prepare ourselves for what we're about to embark on?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. At my core, I'm a teacher, and something that every time I train, I'm really passionate, not only for the child. I have very few interaction now, with foster kids. I work more with foster parents and adoptive parents, but I'm really passionate about helping the caregiver, the foster parent or the adoptive parent, understand what they bring to this. Because it's not only the child that brings their history and the child that brings, their stress and the chaos and that has happened to them, but it's also us as caregivers. What do we bring to this? And I think when we're thinking about the holidays, something that we have to remember is that we bring our own expectations and motivations around the holidays, around Christmas. Especially if you're a parent, a foster adoptive parent that has already raised adult kids and you've done it successfully, and you think, I'll just do the same thing with my foster kids and my adoptive kids, that probably won't work in the same way. Or if this is your first child, even, and you have all these images as to what the holidays are going to be like with a family, with children, I think we sometimes need to grieve those Hallmark moments. I call them Hallmark moments because I love those movies and how everything comes out perfectly every time.
Right.
And that's what we sometimes have in our head. But we need to grieve them, because when we understand the history of our child and how that impacts their present, that's also going to impact our family, right? And how when we try to pass down some of these traditions that we have, or we try to bring to life these Hallmark moments, it's not going to look or feel the same as it does in our head.
Yeah, for sure. That reminds me, it's a little different, but you haven't done this, I don't think, but taking your kids to Disney World.
I haven't done
that. Whoa. So you have these ideas, right? Because you watch the commercials and stuff. I've done it several times, and over the last 23 years, it is never, ever what it was in my head.
Yeah.
And you're paying a lot of money for it.
Exactly.
So same kind of thing,
Same kind of
grieving that it is what it's going to be. It isn't necessarily going to be what you thought it was going to be.
Right. Understanding the needs of your kids, and how your expectations play into that as well. I remember, so we were going to celebrate 1 year Christmas, and one of my girls, she was already working. She was 17 years old at the time, and she would take public transportation to and from work. So after she got out of work, we were going to celebrate our Christmas. We were going to wait for her, and I had like a special dinner prepared, and I had gifts prepared. I had spent so much time on this, and I was waiting and waiting. She never came. And she finally showed up very late, obviously. She was angry. She was moody. And in my head, I was like, I cannot believe she did this. She knew. I did all the right things.
Yeah.
I told her ahead of time.
Yeah.
I told her what the schedule was.
Yeah.
We prepared for it. She came home stressed, moody, a teenage girl, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I go to her room and I said, okay, hurry up and change, come out. It's, we're going to celebrate Christmas. And she's like, I don't want to talk to you right now because I know that if I talk to you, I'm not going to respond well to you. And I was like, I could not even celebrate that because that was really
I was
good
about to
words.
say, that's a victory.
But I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
she's ruining Christmas.
Yeah.
Later, I come to find out that three buses stopped or didn't stop for her. 3 buses came and went, didn't stop for her. It was raining that night. They put, spilt water on her. That's why she was wet. That's why she got home late. And she could not handle that stress and then come celebrate Christmas.
Sure.
So I had to celebrate Christmas with her one-on-one days later when we were able to do it together. But that's just an example of what I wanted to pass down, of my traditions, of the food I had made sure it was there, the gifts I had made sure, and it came out very different than what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that you had to grieve that, didn't you?
Yes.
But then when, just grieving it probably allowed you to be with her in her moment.
Yeah, a few days
Which is
later.
more powerful. Oh, yeah. Was it a few days later?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a few days
okay.
later when she was finally able to okay, this is what happened. This is why I was angry.
Yeah.
And we were able to move on. But, in my head, that was never going to happen,
Yeah.
in that way.
Great story to remember. Yeah, that's good. So, okay, so we're talking about preparing ourselves, which is, tell us how we would do that.
I think we need to be really brutally honest about what we expect. And if you're listening to any of these podcasts that you do, that it's going to be different because of our kids' history. And then be honest of what it might look like, how different it might be, and process that. Process that with someone you trust, with someone who loves you, someone who understands you a little bit. It could be between, spouses. That's always helpful, or a best friend, or professional help if that's what you need as a parent. But it's so important. Think about, what are your expectations and what is the reality? Now, you might know the child a little bit better now that they're with you.
Yeah.
And process that. What did I think it was going to look like? And it's probably not going to look like. And it's grieving almost as if you lost someone, because you lost this idea of what your family was going to be like, or what your life was going to be like. I've had to do this a lot with parents who were empty nesters, and they decided to now bring in foster adoptive kids. I'm not sure if you were empty nester at that time.
No, not yet.
But, okay.
We were close, but not yet.
And they, they feel like, I should be retired right now. I should be having fun. And I'm struggling with this child and their behavior.
Yeah.
So that just gives you an idea of, the things that you have to process and let go and grieve as losses.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I do get that.
Yeah.
And that's an ongoing thing.
Definitely.
It's like, and anyway, okay. So we're going to, so in preparation, we're thinking about, the main thing I'm hearing is to think about, what are my expectations, to be super honest about what if I'm expecting the Hallmark movie, I will be disappointed. One question that I want to clarify is, that's different than basically expecting the worst. So it's not like you're saying, you're not expecting the worst. You're just noticing what your expectations are, and being. One thing I have to remember is to be in the moment.
Be
like
present.
The movie never is good. Whether I'm worried about something and the movie's bad, or whether I'm fantasizing and the movie's good. Whatever the movie is that I haven't seen yet, I don't need to hang my hat on that.
Yeah.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I can go from, okay, well, I'm just going to expect the worst.
Well,
That's not good either, because then I might actually get that. I think reminding myself to just be in that moment each time. Like, if you, in that situation with your daughter, essentially, like, to realize, okay, she's coming in, something has happened. That would be an in the moment thought.
Yes.
Right? Something has happened, and I want to be curious about what that is.
Right. And at the same time, finish Christmas with everyone else who's there,
Oh,
right?
yeah, right. Because you were,
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, and that's a mindful strategy, right? And that's actually, mindfulness helps us stay regulated. And we cannot help our child calm down, focus, stay regulated, stay cognitive if we are not regulated.
Yeah.
So staying in the moment, staying present is a mindful strategy that could be very helpful for us in the moment. Yeah. Definitely.
And that's something we have to practice.
Definitely.
Yeah. And if you haven't been practicing that, you should get started right now.
Yes.
And that's not just for Christmas. That's for going to the grocery store. I mean, just living life, right, as a parent. Because,
Definitely.
Okay, so those are some things that we can, as parents, let's talk about how we can prepare our kiddos.
Yeah, that's an important one. And without going too deep into the brain science, because then we would be here all day.
Yeah.
But let's just a quick foundation. Like, we learn through experience. Our brain learns how to react to certain situations based on what has happened to us in the past, right? So let's think of a patch of grass, okay? There's a field between me and you, and I want to get to you, but my field is empty right now. So what I do is I'm going to get in my car. There's no road to get to you. I'm going to drive over this field in my car to get to you. So the more I drive from here to there, the more marked these tire marks are going to be, right? The grass is going to begin to die there, and I'm going to make a clear, strong path. Right. That is the same way that neural connections work. The more emotion there is tied to a memory or experience, and the more repetitive it is, the stronger that neural connection is going to be. Right. Okay. So our kids could have one or two things related to the holidays. They could have really strong neural connections with a lot of negative emotion attached to it. Right. So every time it was Christmas, maybe Dad would get drunk and the night didn't end very well, right? Every single time we heard those Christmas carols, I know the alcohol comes out and the night is not going to end well, right? That is what my brain has learned. So I'm going to be in fear mode when I start hearing or smelling the sounds and the smells of Christmas, right? Like my brain knows, hey, before when this happened, it did not end well.
Right. And it's not even conscious.
They're not
thinking consciously.
That's really what trauma is, right? It's how your body responds, right? It's not really an event or a memory, but it's how your body responds to that. So that's one thing that our kids could have with the holidays, right? Every time we ate this type of food or heard this kind of music or smelt this. But then they could have those just blank pathways where we never celebrated. And, Christmas wasn't really mentioned, or, every day was just the same no matter what day it was. So now we want to be holly and jolly and bring out good food, and all this is supposed to be positive, but I have no pathway or experience with that. Right. I don't know how to handle that. So you put 20 cookies in front of me and you want me to just eat one, well, I don't know how to do that. Exactly. I want to eat the 20 cookies in front of me, right? So those are the two things we're kind of working with when it comes to the holidays, like the negative, emotions that are tied to some of these memories, but also the lack of experience with some of these things.
And, I'm thinking on it also, many of the kids that have come to us in care, who have chaotic backgrounds, have sensory issues.
Definitely.
So the holidays are, like sensory overload for me. When a lot of people are talking in the same room and there's all these different conversations going on, or presents are flying, or wrapping paper, whatever, like that is overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine for a kid that's never experienced that, and say they do have some sensory issues, that's a whole nother thing, right?
Exactly. Like, we not only have about 80% of kids in care have sensory issues. Okay. So most of them are going to have something, right? Not only that, but triggers come through our senses.
Yeah.
So it's the sensory issues of not being able to handle or to be overwhelmed or be looking always for the sensory, but also when I smell that, I'm reminded of this and it affects my body's response, right? Or when I eat that, I'm reminded of this and it affects my body's response.
Yeah. And think of the another sugar, the
How we
amount of
process,
sugar that's presented at Christmas time. I mean, it's like a free for all, right? We all just, oh, it's Christmas. Why not? So that affects kids tremendously.
Yeah.
Lots of things.
Yeah. And, so what we want to do is we want to prepare our kids by making a plan with them, right? Practicing either giving them new neural connections because they don't exist, right? Like they've never had this type of food before, especially if our kids are from a different ethnic or race, right? They might not have ever eaten what you're about to put in front of them or smelt something that you have about to put in front of them. So some of the things we can do to prepare them is make some of those foods ahead of time. Maybe so you can know what they like, what they don't like, what you expect them to eat that day. Do I have to take my own food for the child? And you have a better idea of how to handle your own expectations, right?
Yeah. And if you don't have time to do that, because when we talked about that earlier, you mentioned that and I was like, oh gosh, I don't have time to make a whole nother meal. But you could at least just talk about those meals and then don't have expectations of whether they eat it or not. Like, who really cares?
Exactly.
Let Aunt Edna know that you're not going to insist that she eats that because she's only eaten corn dogs for her whole life. And that would be really weird to try to, you know what I'm saying?
Eat sweet potato casserole. I mean, just different things. Like even the texture of a sweet potato casserole could be
totally weird, right?
Yeah. So if you don't have time, then just get rid of your expectations.
Right. It's just one day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, but the preparation, we all have time for that because it's like saves time on the back end.
Right. And another thing you mentioned, like when we talk about the cookies and the sugar, right? We don't want to be the person that just takes it all away, right? We need to be creative about that. Be creative. I mean, if there's severe allergies, we need to keep that in mind, right? If, your child really cannot have sugar. Okay. But something that always works when you get a sugar spike or something that could help is to pair it with a protein.
Yeah.
So if we give them one cookie, can we then give them a roll of turkey, right? Turkey meat or a roll of something that has a lot of protein with some nuts maybe, something like that. Also have them actually sit down and enjoy what they're eating and not take the cookie, run away and play and then come back for another cookie, run away and play. But hey, let's sit down. Let's have our nuts with our cookie. Let's talk about what we're eating, enjoy it in that sense so that they can start feeling a little bit full and like satisfied with what they have.
I think that's a really good point. And something that we need to practice for a while leading up to these events.
Yes.
My daughter yesterday, she came in and it was like maybe 4:45 and she had a Christmas party. So she had all this candy. So she had eaten some and then we had put the rest away. She's like, can I have another one of some candy? I said, you know what I think you're getting hungry.
Yeah.
And so let's go see if we can find something to eat and then we can have that candy later. I kind of am a little bit of a sugar Nazi, but I'm working on it.
But I love that because that didn't sound like a no, right?
Yeah.
And no could be really hard for our kids sometimes.
Well, I know when I'm hungry,
yeah.
If there's like a cookie in there, I will grab it instead of reminding myself it's almost dinner time. We have a little bit of time. Yeah. And those hungry moments are a great time to put in the veggies. She actually said, can I warm up these green beans? And that's what she did. And it held her over, but that takes a lot of practice.
It does.
And don't try to pull that off on Christmas Day. When there's plates and plates of sugar.
Yeah.
I mean,
And just, the last thing is we want to prepare them by letting them know, what's going to happen that day or those couple days, if it's going to be a couple of days of celebrating. Yeah. If your child is really new to you, right? This is maybe the first holiday they spend with you, make your world small. That's just going to help your child feel less overwhelmed. That's going to help you feel less overwhelmed. Right. So make your world small, but tell them what's going to happen. Make the schedule, right? Be creative. Maybe they need images, like first to grandma's house, then, play, and then what you're going to do. Try to introduce them to the environment ahead of time. If they've never been to that house before, maybe you can arrive a little bit earlier before everyone gets there and tell them, like, this is where you're going to play. This is where the cousins play. This is where you're going to take your nap. This is where we're going to eat dinner. Show them pictures of people that are going to be there ahead of time. Show them, like, find a connecting point. Like, this is grandma so-and-so. She really likes cats. Like, you really like cats. So I think you guys are going to have something to talk about.
I love it.
And prepare them just as much as you can. Again, they have no experience with these people, with these places, with some of the traditions that are going to happen. So prepare
even some
them.
of the vocabulary. So I noticed this with my daughter. There's some words that are very basic words, but she doesn't have that context. So if you think about this, like, there might not be any context for a family get together. Except maybe, negative in a way, but there might not be, they don't have the context. So I like that. Like, I often find myself pulling up a video of, like, this morning we were talking about a cult. She didn't know what a cult was. So she loves to watch a video. So I'll pull up a YouTube and show her, this is a cult. And so, that is great. And they love that.
I'm reminded of a child that, it was a little boy. He was in the children's home where I was. And they asked him, like, why do we celebrate Christmas? And it was either Christmas or Easter. I don't remember now. But he had the most interesting story about aliens and why we celebrate. No clue as to what that meant or why. And that's a time to teach your children your values and why you do some of those things, because they could literally not have any context as to what it means.
I noticed that. And if you think about the language, as I was a teacher, early childhood educated, and children, so much of their language is developed from 0 to 4, I think. And so we didn't get my daughter till she was almost 4. So there's a lot of language that she doesn't have. That it takes a long, long, long time to develop.
Definitely.
And so this is the same with, moving into any new situation. So, so that brings us, so you talked about going a little bit early. Okay. So there's other people that are going to be at these celebrations. And a big trigger for me is, what do people think? And that's something that I have to constantly let go of. But, whether it's a caseworker or family members or whatever, how I'm handling it, feeling empowered about how I'm going to handle this situation. And it doesn't matter, let me say this, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. But it helps because these are your family members typically, if you can prepare them and let them know ahead of time, I'm stumbling my way through this, grandma or mom or whoever, but these are the ways you can support me.
I hear that over and over and over again from foster and adoptive families, how they feel viewed by the public, some things that they've said. And I always believe that, and I share this with them, that if we grow our understanding of kids from hard places, kids that have experienced trauma in their histories, we will grow our compassion, and that will grow our tolerance for behaviors and for what we're seeing that we don't understand.
Absolutely.
So I think help them grow the understanding. One, be very intentional about it. Just bring it up. It's okay to bring it up. It's, it's not a secret. We all, everyone can see that maybe the child is having a hard time. So bring it up beforehand and just say, you know what, these are some of the ways that we parent our child. I'm going to need to step away from this tradition or from dinner to, take them to their nap or whatever it is that you need to do for your child at that time. And tell them ahead of time. Because in the moment when you're trying to calm your child down and you're trying to calm yourself down, it's really hard to explain it to other people in that moment.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Send them this podcast ahead of time.
That's a good idea.
And let them know, like, first, the child's story is their story. So I don't think you owe anybody specifics.
Great point.
About their history.
Right.
Like, you don't have to tell them, about abuse or anything like that. Just say, their history has impacted who they are now, has impacted their nervous system, their brain, and their behavior more than anything. So, let them know that. Let them know how their brain functions a little bit differently than maybe the cousin, right? Or the other child. So we don't need to be comparing them because they're different, right? And I was going to share the brain model with them.
I think that's great.
Just something easy to help them grow their understanding and also grow their compassion is the brain model. And this comes from Siegel, and you can check that out in his book. But so we use the model of the brain with our hand, right? And so we're going to focus on two parts here. These 4 fingers, and when I close it like this is the front part of our brain, which is right here. This is the cognitive part, the part that we use to learn, to think about cause and effect, to regulate ourselves. But when we're triggered or when we're in fear mode, which a lot of times our kids, that is their response to things, right? What happens is our lid gets flipped, right? So this little part right here is our amygdala, the back part of our brain, our fear part of our brain. And really all we can do with this part of the brain is we can fight, we can flee, or we can freeze. And that looks like bad behavior to the outside person. It looks like this child is rebellious. This child, doesn't listen, doesn't obey, whatever word we used to call them. Yeah. And what we want to do as parents for our kids is we want to help them regulate, calm down, focus, right? So that this part of the brain is online again. And that's all we can, I've worked with caregivers and kids that we teach both of them, and this is how they communicate. The kids will start telling the caregivers, like, your lid is flipped, because we all get our lid flipped, right? Yeah. But this is something easy that you can communicate with grandma, like, I'll be back.
Great.
This is
I love
happening
it.
to my kid.
Yes.
I'll be back. And there's no words, there's no arguing, there's no judgment.
There's no judgment. There's no judgment. When your daughter says this to you,
you're like,
this is just a physiological thing that just happened.
Yeah.
And that's all she's saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy when your daughter tells you, and this happens at my house. I think you need to take some deep breaths.
Yeah, I think we need to regulate again.
I think you need to take some deep breaths.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think the more we can explain, like, hey, mom, hey, grandma, hey, aunt.
Ahead of time.
Because of things that have happened to my child at a very young age, they tend to go here faster, quickly. A lot of things take them here. And I am the type of parent, I choose to help them come back here. And that's what I'm going to do. That's what you're going to be seeing a lot of time.
Yeah. One thing, because I grew up in a totally different generation, long before the decade of the brain, my parents did not have this information. And so I came from the spare the rod, spoil the child, And so this is not the time to have that conversation. And something that you can do is blame it on your trauma training. This is how my agency taught me, and this is the parenting approach that we are required.
Yeah.
If that's
expected to use. Yeah.
If you don't have to get into all of the stuff with your relatives. It's not their business. You don't have to say that either, but you can just blame it on this is the approach that we have to use.
That's really good.
It's
just like you would have a line for your child, right, to help them regulate. You could have a line for yourself.
Right.
That parenting technique looks like it really works for you. This is what we have to use. Right. This is what works for my child.
Yes.
And just have that line ready to respond so you don't have to think about what am I going to say on the spot.
And I would say it ahead of time.
Yeah,
definitely. I love that. I would feel so much more empowered to move into a situation knowing that I've had this conversation with those people who when I thought about my expectations, remember, I thought about not only that, but what am I going to feel when I get some looks, Because I'm a child of trauma. I'm very aware of everyone's looks. And so I need to think about those expectations first, too, and have those conversations when I'm strong and empowered and over the phone versus face-to-face, too.
Definitely. Yeah.
So this is great information, Anna.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that in closing that you'd like to say?
No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, I would just say, I think this is true for anybody, whoever you're going to send this podcast to, or if you're listening, like the more we grow our understanding, we'll have more tolerance for behaviors. And really what these kids need is warm, consistent caregivers. And if we could be that for them, that could be so healing.
Yeah.
So healing.
Yeah. So Anna, each week we have a Wisdom from the Well card. And so you've said a whole lot of information today as far as the takeaways. Is there anything, and don't feel on the spot because I didn't tell you we were going to do this, but if there's anything you can think right off the top of your head that would be good, hey, post this week, this Christmas week. What would you say? What would you say jot down on your refrigerator? Or I'm gonna have it in a card, and they can print it out and post it. But is there anything off the top of your head?
I mean, I think for us as caregivers, because it was definitely true for me, is to grieve those hallmark moments.
Okay.
I would remind myself of that. Like, is this really the child's issue right now, or is this me? What I bring to the relationship?
Okay. So it's expectations.
Yeah, our expectations and our motivations, right?
Okay, well, we can tweak that into something.
Definitely.
I think that's true for not just this week, but for always.
Definitely.
Like, what are my expectations, and are they what is the word? Are they
realistic?
Yeah, are they realistic?
And that's the thing about expectations. They're usually not.
Usually not.
That's
right.
why they're called expectations.
Whether they're positive or negative, probably either one. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would love to
This
have
was
you
fun.
back. Would you join us again on
Definitely.
some more good stuff? You have so much to share. So thank you. Thanks for taking just a tiny bit. I know this is a hectic week. I know it is so hectic. But thank you. I think that this podcast will pay in dividends for you. And I think that's a great idea that Anna had, is share this. This is coming from somebody. It's not coming from you.
Yeah.
But it's basically, hey, this is what I need from you. It's okay to ask for help. Honestly, most people are saying, wow, to you. I want you to hear that. Most people, that brings tears to my eyes, because most people are saying, wow, to you, because you're doing something that's hard. You're helping someone that needs you. And so asking for something from the people that are your loved ones, do it. Ask for what you need. And so share this podcast with your family members this week. And I hope you all have a joyous, wonderful, loving, slow, in the moment, at least a few in the moments, right? And Merry Christmas. Don't forget, download this Wisdom from the Well card. It's going to be something about expectations. You'll have to click on the link to find out. Merry Christmas. Don't forget, share this. Lots of us foster parents, we need support and we need to be encouraged. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Mama's way.